Good afternoon to you from sunny Wales. Sunny Wales. I've never been in Wales when it wasn't raining. And, oh, thanks. Thank you. I've never been in sunny Wales, so that's because it's usually raining here or snowing, doing something else. And I just finished a day and a half, or pretty much a 2-day loading project with a friend's horse. So my presentation is going to be a little bit haphazard today. I have some notes that I will read from, and I will also try to present some extemporaneous thoughts about two subjects. One is going to be keeping your horse's attention in a general way, and then perhaps also in some specific circumstances, maybe some more difficult situations where people's safety could be at issue, or the horse getting away from you. That happened yesterday. Wait till I tell you about that. This horse we were trying to load that a friend of mine had taken from Ireland over here to Wales, or over here to Yorkshire, cut loose in one of the most dramatic ways. I came back to the tree where I'd left her tied, and there was just a halter hanging there. I wasn't witness to her exit, but I knew after I saw that halter what kind of an exit it was, full commitment. Anyway, I'll tell you about her campaign through this formal British garden at top speed with these pipe plate feet on a freshly rained lawn. That was something to witness. Croquet court took a beating. So, well, could have been better. But as it was, we got her in. She went in a number of different times, a number of different ways, and a lot of that also had to do with getting her attention and keeping it. So I think that this is a good time to read a little bit from my notes, which I took today. Usually I don't speak from notes because I don't like to. But I'm going to do it today because for some reason on this bumpy ride, it's a very tall trailer, very tall. It was a lorry. I couldn't really keep track of my thoughts without writing them down. It was a pretty bumpy, rocky trip through the mountains. So I'm going to start by just talking about change, because usually when we're talking about training horses, we're looking at things that need to be changed, and we usually look at the horse and think, wow, what can I change there to make it a better horse? What can I do to make it a better animal, get better results, impress the owner, impress myself, fix something? Never really sure who you're often. People try to change horses for many, many reasons. I couldn't pretend to know them all. But what I do know is that most of us, animals included, resist change, even when it's change for the better. It's somehow, for many of us, just easier to go along and not question or challenge physical habits, mental habits, emotional habits. Routines are comfortable in a way. And so it's difficult. It can be very difficult to... is everybody... Listen, can you hear me? I guess you probably can. Maybe someone would say otherwise. All right. I won't worry about it. But when we're talking about changing horses and getting sort of a new way into their frame of mind, a new way into their awareness, we really have to, for the best results, be aware of our contribution to the choices that the horse can consider, including the behavior that you're objecting to. Because if you're not aware of the fact that you might have a contributing influence on his ability or decision or likeliness to do something that's disappointing, then you're really not assessing the situation from the horse's point of view. Because if it's just you and the horse and you don't think you count, then it's not a surprise if the horse doesn't think you count either. You've got to be aware that your input, for better or for worse, is producing the results that you're getting. So, in other words, it could be, in no small measure, the mark of the last half a dozen people who trained the horse, or the last person the horse was with 10 hours ago, that you're dealing with. But that really doesn't matter, because in the end, your ability to read the animal is going to be the mark of the man or the woman that you are. The measure of your skill is going to be your ability to properly assess that animal in the moment. No different than, you know, you go in to have your teeth worked on, or you have some sort of illness or malady. You want to go to somebody who can read your report, read your tests, look at your face, watch you walk, listen to your descriptions of how you're feeling, and be able to say something that's not only sounding good, but correct. Maybe it sounds bad. It's still better to have it correct and unpleasant news than to be some wingding answer that is just going to make you feel good, and, you know, 2 weeks later you're worse than ever. This is what happens often in horse training, which is that the truth of the actual matter, the facts of the matter, are only conveyed. They can be no greater than the conveyor's ability to know what's really going on. This takes time to understand how to read a horse. That's a fact. So I want to say that if you can combine the awareness of your intention, and I mean awareness of your intention, mean I would like this horse to settle down right now. How tense are you when you ask him? How reactive are you to his behavior as you are applying intention and energy and focus to the solution? All of these things have to be weighed and looked at from the horse's point of view, because really, that horse reflects you in the moment. He reflects what you know, he reflects what you can read, and he reflects what you're capable of imparting to him. I always have felt that if your presence doesn't bring out the best in the horse, you might want to think about that. I mean, you have that option to bring out the best in an animal or another person, a dog, a best friend, a neighbor, someone in your family. You want to bring out the best in that individual. It means you have to have a clear idea where they are right now and the kinds of things that will make their experience of you pleasant and nice for both of you. That's really something that is in the domain of anyone who can think straight. Even if you can't, you have the chance of thinking straight, so it's a good thing to put some effort into. When you have an upset horse, the first thing I'd like you to think about is, how are you going to influence the timing and placement of his rear feet? So let's say that you're a horse trainer, or you're a horse owner, a horse lover. You have, at various times, the opportunity to work with a horse, let's say, on a lead rope, in a bridle, on a lunge line, or loose. So there are some options. Could be you go in a stall, you have him loose in a pasture, and you're just asking him to move around, or you're in a round pen with him, or a square pen, you're leading him down a road. But in any case, we have to have some actual facts in mind, which is that the horse is naturally heaviest on the forehand. He's built that way, so that he can put his head down without his butt flying up in the air. He's got the center of his body is generally the forehand. If you go to the end of the nose and to the back of the tail, kind of his front legs are going to be in the middle. So he'll bear most of the weight there, because it helps him to eat and also to be able to see, to tip the pole either way when his head is down eating, and it also allows him to throw that front end up in the air for purposes of fighting, climbing, stopping, turning, breeding, all kinds of things that he needs that front end to be a little bit heavier. Also, it compensates for the fact that the only place he's really connected in the spine to his limbs is in the hips. So what nature has traded away for his stability in the back, you get a heavier front end, and usually on horses that are not kept in confinement, a really good heart girth and abdominal muscles and back muscles that will unify the whole horse around whatever intentions and purpose he has in the moment, so that he can operate as one athletic, graceful, accurate, and purposeful being. Okay? That's the way I look at it anyway. So you want to consider how to get your rein or your lead rope or your thoughts tied in to his ability to do what you want with his back feet. The reason this is so important, and I'm not talking about disengaging the hindquarters. No, I don't talk about that, because I don't want the availability of the hips to come at the expense of a stationary front foot, because that is far too limiting, and that type of behavior, repeated endless times, makes it very difficult to ride a light horse. When he feels the slack leave from your lead rope or your rein, and that translates into a request, please get the front end heavy but keep the hips moving, that becomes, over time, a very difficult relationship to enjoy when you're riding and trying to go somewhere quickly or change direction fast or change leads. There's always a little bit of room for doubt whether or not he should, whether you're asking for a one-rein stop or whether you just like him to disengage the hips and load the forehand, or load both front legs when you're asking for a collection or for a half halt. Very often horses that are schooled excessively in this disengagement practice can misunderstand the meaning of a rein and a lead rope, so we're not talking about that. But what I am talking about is that the placement, and more importantly the timing of the replacement of the hind feet, determine whether or not and to what degree the forelegs can be instructed to move accurately. Well, we can add gracefully too, but let's just say in accordance with your plan or your step that you are asking for, a maneuver that you have in mind. Any ability of the forehand to deliver that part of a movement is going to be depending on your ability to transfer the weight from that forehand to a hip that is where you need it to be for what you're going to do next. Okay, so what does this really mean? It means that you've got to have a plan, and you've got to be able to see the moves out ahead of you. But if you have no plan, and you don't really have a plan about the next maneuver or step or what the horse can do with those back feet in response to you, I'm going to tell you that in my experience with things I've seen, it's best not to be up on that horse until you can start to think this through. Your safest place in that case would be on the ground. But I fully believe that you get back what you put out in life. At least that seems to be the general rule. Sometimes it can take a while, depending on all kinds of things, but it seems to be an observable fact that whatever you invest will come back to you, and that includes your best efforts to reach a horse, whether you're using pressure and release or feel and release. I think it matters not. What matters is the quality of your thoughts. It matters the way that you regard your horse, whether you love him, whether you respect him. He'll put up with whatever you serve up as long as your connection to him, I believe, comes from a good spot in yourself. And that doesn't mean whether it's what somebody else thinks, it's whether what you really know about yourself and about that horse, he feels it. Okay, that's what I think. So, in any case, I think it's important to consider the horse's point of view about yourself, and try to be honest about it. It's quite clear if a horse doesn't want to be caught by you, that he doesn't want to be caught by you. Particularly if he lets other people catch him. If he pins his ears at you, he's pinning his ears at you. So just to ignore that, or to think it doesn't matter, or that that's just the way that horse is, I would rethink that. People get really used to being around cranky horses, and I will never get used to it. It's not the way a horse is meant to be, and it is the way horses are either kept or trained that turns them into that type of energy center, and I think it's worthy of considering carefully what another being feels like in order to be pumping negativity toward you. So be careful, because behind that negativity is usually, you know, several hundred kilos of bad feelings. So whether it's from physical pain or excessive exercise or boredom or whatever it is, just remember that there are answers to these things that can involve your best efforts to be clear about how you feel also in those moments. Okay. Now, I guess I'm going to read you from my notes now. I don't like to do this, but maybe it was an interesting note. I'll have to see here. I put here, a case in point would be, when contemplating an action toward the horse of any kind, it's safe to assume, I'm just reading my notes from this trip I just took, It's safe to assume, and I know this from hard-won experience, that whatever pressure, whatever pressure might be delivered can faithfully be expected to be to return to you in full measure, plus a bit, depending on many things. As Bill Dorrance was known to say, it's not so much a matter of what a horse will do for you if he understands the job. It's what he'll do to you if he doesn't. And I think that there is certainly some truth in that, is that to be clear, abundantly clear about what you expect and how you expect the horse to figure it out, which will be clear or not in your presentation to him. I think these are things to really bear in mind when you're trying to get a change. Let's say you've got a horse who's trying to pull away, or a horse that's upset by displays of various advertisements or flags in the wind, or the flapping of a tent, or loud music, or the sounds of other livestock at a fair. All these kinds of things will affect a horse. And really, you think about it, you know, what if your family was there? What if all your children suddenly went wild and ran off in 10 directions? I mean, it would feel pretty bad, wouldn't it? So you want to try to think about that horse with perhaps a little bit of empathy for the circumstances into which he's been put, which had nothing to do with him in the first place. So we want to really think about it. It's a matter then of how are you going to share the time and that space with another being, whether it's of the same species or another. It could be a human being, it could be babysitting your neighbor's dog, it could be one horse of yours or 10. It doesn't matter. But the thing is, are you aware in the moment of the feelings that are passing out of you, and that you are also perceiving from that other being? Let's say, doesn't matter, horse or human. I'm just talking now about levels of awareness. The small but instructive changes that are either about you or your plan, or about an animal's plan or a person's plan. I mean, how sensitive are you? Horses are sensitive, right until they've been around a lot of people that don't require or don't have use for that sensitivity, in which case they will begin to reflect a certain dullness. And those are horses that people want to wake up and make lively again. So these are hard lives for horses that are in between the expectations that are clear and unclear, relatively unclear, most of them, about how a horse is expected to be. So it's important when a horse appears to be misbehaving. I put that in quotes, misbehaving. That's a judgment call. Maybe he's misbehaving. Maybe he's just trying to warn you that that thing over there is concerning. And I've had the experience. I've had the experience many times where a horse just wants you to notice. Once he notices and sees that you notice and that you're not concerned, they can go back to eating. They can go back to chewing on each other's necks, or scratching their head on their knee, or nosing around on the ground to see what anybody else left there. But it is really a job of a horse, and people seem to like to be part of the herd and part of the lead mare phenomenon, or however it goes in people's relationships. But I know that if you're really trying to bond with a horse or be part of what you think their life is, certainly it must be known that horses inform each other about what is going on around them, and they don't punish each other for doing it. So I think before you tune a horse up or get after him for trying to bring your attention to something, it's important to see whether you really can benefit from what he's showing you. Could be these are other pictures and thoughts and stories are coming into my mind that I'll save for another day. But I've been helped by horses many times who let you know, and I just want to point that out, that the need to be right, or the need to be the trainer, the need to be in charge, the need to keep your relationship with your title that you have about yourself relative to the horse or relative to another person, or a stature at the moment, a perception of yourself in a role. It can be so self-limiting that you miss the importance of the breathing. You're not able to tell or even read the tensions that are held in the body or the face, or the lack of tension, for example. The projection and direction of core energy shifts in the line of sight, and as the way that affects breathing. Arms that are bent, elbows bent, rigid forearms, all these things will affect whether a horse can do what you're asking him to do, what you think you're asking him to do, can be interfered with by where you look, what weight your leg is on. I have literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours of clips that reveal this, and I'm sure it's not just me. I think anyone who's paying attention can see this. But these are things that I'm going to encourage you to be aware of as you share space with a horse and that you have an expectation for and of. Okay, so let's see how else I could say these things. I'm talking in general ways. I really want to get to the mechanics and the nuts and bolts, and I'm sure you would be impatient to have me do it too. Like, what do you do when he rears up? Well, there is a what do you do, but how about don't make him rear up? He can't. They don't rear up without help. They rear up in resistance to many things. Many things. And I think it's important to be aware that a horse doesn't pull away or run off or rear up or appear to get put into a panic situation without help. It's important to see what the contribution of what is contributing to his state of mind, and realize that the misbehavior is a symptom of other things that are often well within your purview, well within your ability to manage and redirect the things, redirect the energy in him, so that instead of getting tighter and tighter, he gets calmer and calmer. And a lot of that will have to do about where you put your own feet and how short you have your rope, and where have you thought about in your schooling how important it is to keep the bridge of the nose available and to be able to deliver the weight to any foot you want when you want. These are things that need thought and time if you're going to become good at this. Okay, that's what I think. But if you have not yet learned to read the usually relevant and sometimes critically important content that these subtle indications of truth convey to one who knows what it is that the sense of sight and sound and feel can convey from one being to another, then the deeper reality, actually, through which and in which you can share time and experience and significant meaning with another being, it will not be yours. Not yet. Tom Dorrance coined the phrase surface worker just for this reason, and he lamented often publicly that so many supposed professional horse trainers were not more than a hair's breadth away from working at almost nothing. And yet, in the pursuit of mastery and excellence in their chosen field, they were limited by the vagaries of the human ego and by self-imposed limits on awareness. I'm bringing this up because this isn't just me. I'm not just sitting here in 2018 talking about this. I was listening to Tom Dorrance talk about this in the early 90s. So these are observed, these things are observed by many people. And I'm sure that Tom isn't the only one. I'm not the only one. It's easy to see evidence of this. But what's hard to do, particularly if you're in a routine and you have a routine that's comfortable, is to step back from it and ask yourself, have I taken a deep breath? Yeah, I take a deep breath. Okay, here's a deep breath. Oh, did your chest come up or did your belly go out? Because if your chest is going up, it isn't a deep breath. It's just a quick breath that's as full as you can by lifting up your shoulders above your diaphragm. A deep breath, you have access to the diaphragm and your belly goes out, and maybe you feel like you're fat against your belt. I don't know. But one thing I know is that if you're not breathing deeply, the horse isn't either. And if he's not breathing deeply, the connection between his forehand and his hips is not going to be as available to you on your lead rope or your rein as it would be if he were breathing in a rhythmic, steady, confident way. Oxygenating the horse's body is a really important thing to do. And shallow breathing, tight diaphragms doesn't do it. Okay? So this deeper experience with a horse, which I think many people are interested in, is going to be the result of pursuing through a combination of things The human pursuit of this depth will be enhanced by a combination of things, and that is practicing the right things, your burning desire to understand the horse's emotional and mental, the underpinnings of emotion and intellect. I say intellect, horse has intellect, it has a power to reason, that are behind and that affect his, in combination, the emotional and mental aspects in a horse's structure, his mental setup, and their combined effect on the availability of his physical system to you. You are apt to reach and pass across that threshold of refinement and higher awareness if you start to incorporate in your thoughts and in your daily practice a lot of these small things that affect everything that the horse can do for you. Talking about a lot of things you can sense and feel but not see. I can't point to all these things, but I can talk about them, and I'm sure of what I'm saying, and I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but I read a lot and hear a lot about people reaching for a higher state of awareness, more accuracy, less violence toward the horse. Then you have to do the work to get there. It's personal work, private work. Maybe you get help. Maybe you talk to people. Maybe you keep a journal. I don't know. Maybe you film yourself. That's one thing. Boy, those films don't lie. Yikes. But what I can say is that onlookers are known to be impressed by the effects of this refinement and higher awareness, and often they'll start talking about how you leave a magical impression, or you're some kind of a horse whisperer or something. But I'm sorry, nothing could be further from the truth. It's not about such magic. It's not about that. I'll discuss the mechanics and the physics now behind the elusive concepts that I've been talking about for 20 minutes. And just to say that really you have, there are very evident mechanics and very evident skills and physics that are going to affect the alignment and availability. The alignment of the horse, the availability of his muscles and his mind and his decisions are going to be the result of effective mechanics. Part of it has to do with how you handle the relationship between your equipment and his physical reality. Heavier on the forehand, at rest and in nature. A flight animal that will also balance curiosity with flight. How are you going to use his capacity to be afraid and his capacity to move? Do you liven him up in confinement? Do you teach him to run away from you as you focus on his body, looking him in the eye, chasing him around either with a flag or a stick or a whip, causing him to pull against that rope and counter-bend on the circle? These are things to think about if you want to keep his attention in public when there are more risky situations, more liability maybe for you, more ways for people to get frightened or get hurt, or for the horse to get away from you. You want to really make sure you understand that if you are spending your time chasing a horse in a circle or schooling him in confinement in a circle, that when you have him loose on a lead in public or in circumstances where you're not in control of all the input that he's going to be responding to, there's not going to be a big surprise for you. There shouldn't be. That loose on a lead, even with a bit in his mouth, if he's been used to being schooled in a circle or confined in a restraint rig, or restraining equipment in a circle, for example, whether it's a lunge line or a bitting rig or side reins or anything else, once you have him loose, kind of game on, he's going to have access to many parts of himself that you may have not practiced. You may not have practiced managing him, and so it will feel as though he's doing things to you that he's perhaps not available in the ways that would favor and reflect what you think the relationship is about or should be about, okay? So I'm going to read now from some things. I'm sorry, but my penmanship is appalling, and I got to put my glasses on and really try this now. So I'm going to, oh yes, I forgot about this part. You want to consider that your horse kind of operates like a canoe. What do I mean by that? I mean, you really you drive a canoe from the back. If you're in a canoe by yourself, you're going to be in the back of it. But the arrival at your chosen destination really relies wholly on the interplay between the establishment of a direction and balance at the front. Okay, so you're going to move a canoe somewhere. You're going to position the front of it from the back of it, and in a way you do that with the horse as well. But with a horse, that balance between the establishment of posture that is able to be held at rest, head down, head to the left, head to the right, and the maintenance of that posture, however you request or require it. And I'm not talking about by strapping him in place. I'm talking about asking him to hold his head here or there. Neck up and down in longitudinal flexion, lateral flexion to the left or right. If you can maintain these things in motion, as well as the handler or rider's capacity to allow a shift in his weight from back to front and front to back, left to right and right to left across the diagonals in forward motion. Now this is no joke. This is the result of a lot of thought and a lot of time and a lot of awareness about what it takes to do this without loading up his mental and emotional system with discomfort or with distractions. In other words, your foundation on these horses can produce moments of incredible elegance, just sheer beauty, the interplay between the species that's breathtaking. But if it has the look of a pained or a strained relationship, it's because it is. So the time that you can put into the components that lead to the delicate relationship that you would like to be part of, the delicate and elegant relationship that is also powerful and graceful and fast and reliable, safe to be around, and easy to manage without looking like, you know, you're in a boxing ring on a bad night sort of thing. You know, this is possible to avoid if you put the time in. Many people don't have the real time it takes to train a horse, you know. But anyway, the most effective use of the aids is constantly compromised, actually, if not completely nullified, by the unconscious and habitual practice of blocking a horse on the ground from the saddle with misplaced line of sight, as I said before, shallow breathing, rigid bent elbows, rigid forearms, and misusing one's own weight as you stand on one foot or the other, any place ahead of where the girth would be, were he tacked up. But anyway, any place, say, between where the diaphragm and the lung junction is, anytime you're ahead of that on the foot that's nearest to him, it will change what he can do for you, and it will change what you can do with him. So that's what I've noticed anyway. These seemingly trivial details can radically affect the outcome of time spent with a foal, a Mustang, stallions, I'm reading from my notes now, and other sensitive, supersensitive, ultra-sensitive horses whose awareness is still fully available for best results. This is important, because when it hasn't been dulled or corrupted from frequent contradictions in feel and in presentation that that are present in an ordinary kind of experience. By ordinary, I mean day-to-day routines. The sensitivity of, say, I'll give those same examples again, an ultra-sensitive horse, a well-bred, barely trained foal or young horse that hasn't really been started yet. Some studs are super touchy. Mustangs are, it's just like trying to grab air sometimes. You want to get a hold of them, but it's no wonder so many horses go to slaughter, really, isn't it? They go to slaughter because they're misunderstood. They're mishandled because they're misunderstood. This requires time. But I'm going to say again, knowing ourselves at a deeper level is key to establishing a spot where the horse's innate curiosity about us and what we might do or expect him to do can get a solid foothold from which the horse and the human, can move forward in a logical sequence of behavior, of exercises that both of you can rely on without the loss of either try or confidence as you both experiment, seeking success, outcomes that feel good and that you would want to have again. This is between people too. You have to pay attention to what you do and to what comes back from what you do. See how it is to feel what another offers, and then before you give an instant reaction, maybe you do nothing for a while. Just think. See how it feels to do nothing. That's what I often do. It's how I've gotten, I believe, better at what I do, is to think about what I'm going to do first. Not everything requires a response, Anyway, let me see if I had anything else to say or to contribute. Oh yeah, here we go. Let me see how much more notes I have, and then maybe I want to talk. Oh dear. Oh, I did a lot of writing, didn't I? Well, should I keep going? Tell me. Happy birthday. Oh, it's not my birthday. But thank you. It was my birthday in April. Somebody just said happy birthday, but thank you. Okay, I'm going to continue here. Okay, and now I'm getting some. Okay, I'll keep going. Try and confidence, both of those things are very closely intertwined. And I want to say that when a person is trying to keep a horse's full attention, but forgets that a horse knows if you do or don't have access to its hooves and your immediate plans for their action or their stillness, any hope of anything the horse can do for you will undeniably lead to a misapplication of energy. You can't forget that the horse knows if you control his feet or not. Whether you've got him in hobbles, whether you've got him a rope around his foot, or whether you have already figured out the lead rope to hoof connection. Or you think that just because you have a lead rope to rein connection that you actually control the feet because you've got your bridle on. You can do a lot of things with pain, but that still doesn't mean you control the feet. I'm talking about placing and replacing a foot through feel, through release, or through pressure and release in a way that the horse understands and can deliver you consistent and accountable results so that when you're up there, your combined weight can go where you want. Okay? So, it's important. Because when the bottom half of yourself is securely attached to the top half of that horse, it's really important that you remember that it's a good idea for the horse to be part of this plan at a deep level, and that means he's giving you control of the feet because he trusts you to handle those feet and to guide him in a way that has meaning. Let someone take you by the hand for 20 minutes through town with a blindfold on and see what kind of trust you have to come up with going through town, through traffic, around, off a curb, across the street. Try it sometime. You'll see what the horse has to come to let you drag him through life by the mouth. It's really, really a humbling experience to give your control of your feet to someone, even if you know and love them. Give it a try. All right, let me keep reading here. Let's see if there's anything that I want to convey. Okay. Just give me a minute. Okay. Okay. Well, just bear with me a second. I'm really wanting to say that there's a real common misunderstanding about where and how the most effective power over a horse is exerted and maintained. This has perhaps been my toughest challenge to convey to other professionals and skeptics who find it easier to mention words like magic or horse whisperer, when in fact what's really necessary, I'm neither a magician or a horse whisperer, by the way. I had to buckle down and do the real work required to honestly assess my own contributions to what was going on when a horse wasn't doing what I wanted. When a horse didn't understand what was meant by what I did, then it doesn't mean that when he does understand it and someone happens to be looking and it's later than they're able to achieve, that I'm a magician. That we have to really get this idea out, and anybody who's going around really capitalizing on this concept really ought to rethink it, because there'll be a horse one day who will set you straight. Now, back to the mechanics. It must be remembered that a sound horse, at the walk, in an initiating, meaning beginning a stride with a hind foot, okay, this will be followed by movement of the foreleg on the same side, okay? I'm talking now about the cadence of the footfall, the management, the pattern of the footfall at the walk. It's very important to have this very much in mind, okay? The other gaits matter too, and with gaited horses it's a bit worse, a bit different. Did I say worse? I certainly didn't mean that. It's worse to figure out. It's harder to figure out the amble, the rack, one of these, many of these other ways that horses balance at speed when they're bred for different purposes. If you're just used to looking at 3 gaits, walk, trot, canter, gallop, we'll say 4 gaits, by the time you start thinking about and trying to get your mind around the way gaited horses move, it's a bigger challenge. So for the moment, I just want to say, with all respect to the people who have Tennessee walkers and Rocky Mountain horses and the whole slew of other gaited horses. You have I've got the Pasafinos, there's a whole bunch. I should talk about that sometime, those other gaits and those other breeds, and I will, because it's interesting. It's interesting, and it's worth knowing. And also, if you are a horse trainer and you really care about horses, you wouldn't want to close the door on an opportunity to help a horse just because he had gaits that you weren't familiar with. So I will go into that at some point in the future. But okay, for the moment, the walk. A back foot will move a front foot on the same side. As a front foot moves, whether it's the first or second step in a stride, it doesn't matter, but a front foot moving will draw an opposite hind foot up to create a diagonal upon which or over which your combined weight, or if the horse is by himself, over which his weight can pass. So that stability in the walk is a really important thing to be mindful of when you consider what exercises you want to do. And any excessive exercise that causes the horse to disengage his hips, I will tell you, can result in a situation where he can learn, unfortunately, to take a leading shoulder in one direction before the opposite hind, that means the other side of that same diagonal, has even gotten around to be on the correct side. So I have personally witnessed and given quite a bit of thought to the horses that are still catching, let's say, a right hind leg up to the right side of the body before the left shoulder is opening. So instead of actually being able to move through, walk through, launch through a turn in any meaningful way, excessive amounts of confinement and excessive schooling in lateral work before the front end and the hindquarters have been properly separated to the rider's satisfaction. Let me just say the functions of the fork. Many people, okay, I'm going to back up now. Hold on. Just forget I just said it in that way. I want to say it another way. There is a tendency for people to teach the side pass, and a tendency for people to teach leg yields and lateral work before a clear separation between the forehand and the hindquarters has been established and made accessible. Okay, now I see I have a really low internet connection. I don't even know if I'm recording this for anybody. So let me go inside. Hey, Jess, do you know if we have a signal here? It says we don't maybe have one. Do you have a signal?
My thing's just died here.
Okay, well, can you see if this thing is working? Because I think I don't have one. Is it on?
It's working fine. I have mine on to check. I'm gonna
Do you think it's on?
I'm not quite sure. I'm just taking the front on and double check. That normally does it.
Okay, I think maybe I'm talking to nobody. Can you guys hear me? Would sure be good to know. Okay. Hey, Annie. Okay, still listening here, Tanya Spencer. Are we still on?
Yeah.
Okay,
On.
good. I'm going to go back outside.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I just, there's no point in me carrying on out here with the sun going down talking to myself, actually. So, okay, so as you have a situation, I just canceled this thing. Or did I? Oh, now I cussed on the thing. Okay, well, this isn't so smooth. All right. It says it's recording, so I'm going to believe it. Whoops. All right. So as you are thinking now, I've made a real mess of this. I was talking about the footfall, thought I lost the connection, then I hung up the phone. I'm going to start this over again for those of you who are kind enough to still be with me in this little mess up. I will say that as a general rule, you're trying to get control of the feet and you're trying to establish a way to predictably and consistently ask that horse to stay with you. You cannot do it without being mindful that the movement of a hind foot is intended to and is very likely to move a front foot on the same side. That front foot will draw an opposite hind up underneath it to recreate a diagonal base of support, and as that hind foot, the second hind foot comes up, it will release the front foot on the same side, which is your fourth beat in the stride. And the reason those front feet move when a hind foot comes up behind is so they don't get stepped on. If it stayed there, which can happen when toes get too long and heels get too sore and all kinds of other things happen. If a back foot has two sore heels, two back feet have two sore heels, and two front feet have two long toes, you'll see your horses start to step on themselves from back to front. But the reason that I'm bringing all this up is so that you have a clear idea how to coordinate the movement of your lead rope, decisions about where to be, when to pull, when to release. And you do that in conjunction with the timing and the placement of his feet. Okay? So, in summary, this is the summary, is that 4 feet will move once in a single stride. Front hoof movement calls the back feet forward, the opposite hind foot forward. Movements in the hind feet propel the front feet on the same side ahead. This actual fact is actually one of the most important things in maintaining and managing the alignment of a horse in speed, during speed, and balance and direction of any horse whose attention is wandering off. And whether he's on a lead, a lunge line, or under saddle, whether he's at liberty, you have the challenge of staying in the moment. I won't say predicting, but reading the horse and being able to anticipate what he's likely to do based on his nature, what he's likely to do based on his history with you, not just as an individual, but as a horse. Keeping the horse's attention and his awareness of the amount of space you share and who or whatever else is in that space, large or small, whether it's vehicles, other animals. All of this is the key to determining how and when to influence his movement. I don't generally say, and I won't say, correct his movement, because distractions, which are what we call things that make a horse shy or pull away or rear up or get frightened, They're driven by a response to the perceived need for self-preservation, okay, in a given moment. So it's natural for a horse to warn others and to be aware that we need to be aware that it's natural for a horse to warn other horses. And if you are part of his team right there, he's trying to tell you something, punishing him for doing what he's set up to do, you might want to think of another response, you know. Its relative impact can be affected. The relative impact of your changes and corrections can be affected by the degree to which a horse has been desensitized. The commonly practiced and promoted desensitizing techniques, you may want to rethink doing that. It might be better to get think ahead when you have a young horse. How much life are you going to want in an older horse? Are you going to want a horse that's accurate, fast, accountable to your momentary changes of direction, your need for speed, athleticism? Maybe don't start with a young horse that needs to be dulled out so that you're safe. Maybe the thing to do would be to make sure that the horse you're really trying to learn something from can really operate with your best interests in mind at a conscious level. There are older, gentler, more experienced horses that are really good for younger people, less experienced people, new trainers. All these things, there's really going to be an ideal fit between horses with experience and people who lack experience. There should be nothing to be ashamed of about that. It takes time to learn these things and to get good. Really, really, truly accomplished people don't talk about it much. It's what I found out. So let me see if I have written down anything else interesting here. Oh yes, this had to do with how do you really learn? How do you really learn how to take care of a troubled horse? Well, the problem is no two horses are the same. And what one is often confronted with when trying to influence or to correct a distracted, tuned-out horse is the mark of, as I said, the mark of the trainer or the people who were there last. The good part about this is, unless the spirit or the soul of the horse has been irreparably damaged, most really do remain open in some measure to the prospect that a clear intent is possible to convey, and they will search for meaning in what you do. The horses really do, I believe, want to feel successful and to respect the presentation and take it seriously. Maybe I've just been lucky, but I've been around some really, really impressive horses who have been able to display a genuine interest in sorting out the meaning in your motions, the meaning in your presentation. And I guess if you are around horses that don't have any evidence of this genuineness or this interest, again, it would be important to see what your contribution to their dullness might have been, or whether the need to rehearse and to school and reschool and train and retrain has led them to become bored. I mean, that does happen. Anyway, this is what I've seen and experienced countless times, and the reason I'm presenting my observations to you now and in this way is that so often I see that the best effort people can come up with is really quite adequate, but the equipment that they use isn't. So let's try to get a lead rope that is long enough so that you're well-schooled, well-rehearsed, and deeply respected efforts, deeply respected by the horse, by me, by your friends, and even by yourself, can only really manifest in the horse in front of you if you have a lead rope that is long enough to handle the excitement that a horse is capable of exhibiting in a given instant. A 6-foot lead rope just isn't enough. So I'd say 4 or 5 meters would give you sufficient room to manage well many things that are likely to happen with or to a horse. And it's better really to be in a position to be his guide and his friend than his punishing officer in command. I think it's going to be much more effective in the long run to align yourself with his concerns and show him the ease with which you can help him find a calmer moment, help him find a calmer way through something that could be upsetting to both of you. After all, he didn't ask to be in most of the positions that he finds himself. He didn't have any role in getting there, except perhaps that he looked like a desirable horse or a good one to have. So he ended up being purchased, and for those reasons that were beyond his doing, he ends up with you. But that can't be said to be anything other than happenstance for the horse. Your job, if you want to have a horse that's safe and looking out for you, is to let him feel that concern that you have when he's upset or distracted, rather than play the heavy hand. And I'm going to say this because if you find yourself dangling, you find yourself dangling by one foot from the stirrup at a gallop, you really have no choice at that time but to reflect that it's quite likely much too late for him to change his opinion of you. I mean, this is just such a regrettable thing when people get hurt. And in a relationship like this, things are not apt to unfold in the best possible way if you've been too hard, too punishing, too critical. You've lacked the empathy to understand or to even think why he could be upset, but instead just try desperately to turn off the behavior without taking his nature into account. A horse's clear visions of his surroundings is really to your benefit, and the unfettered access to a freely moving head and neck and the feet are still one of the first things that I teach a horse whose lead rope has made its way into my hand. It doesn't matter how short or long the rope. If I don't have access to the movement, to the position and shape of that neck, there is absolutely no chance that I will control his feet. So the rider or handler's connection to the horse's feet then is something that should be at the top of your list. Critical if the horse is to ever later separate a request for life from you and be available. You want to be able to direct that life in the horse all the way down to his feet in a respectful way and get a respectful response, meaning that when control of the feet and their movement is given to another, whether it's your own feet, the horse's feet, the full range of motion is necessary. First, at a standstill, you absolutely cannot control a horse's movements unless you're going to start using pain and excessive pressure. If you're going to guide a horse at speed in a way that is fluid and shared, the understanding behind it is shared, the directions are clear, and the relationship has respect in it between you, you have to be also able to adjust the posture at a standstill when the feet are not moving. I don't know any other way to say it except that. Okay. So, when we're going to talk now about, I've got a lot else I could say here, but I think I'm running out of a battery on this phone, and I want to not have that happen. I'd like to talk to you for a moment. Maybe if you had a couple questions, I could take some questions. And while you're thinking about those and putting them forward, I want to talk about the way that I have learned means a lot to a horse that has been taught to run away from people and that is hard to catch. When I get in a big space with a horse like that, I'll put myself on the outside and I'll do the running on a square pen or on a round pen, and I'll run around that pen slowly until that horse is in the middle, until he is moving all 4 feet, placing and replacing his feet and following me with his body and turning as I turn, lunging me, if you will, without the rope. And that seems to do a lot to settle the inside of a horse and make them accessible. It will teach them to catch you. Those of you who don't have an easy time catching and haltering a horse, I could suggest that you You set it up so that they are on the inside, and they will find their way to the inside if you start to run around the outside of that pen. Doesn't have to be an Olympic-sized dressage court. We're talking about 60, 100-foot round pen, something like that. I don't know that I would do it on a 30 or 40-foot circle. I would do it on a bigger circle because the horses that have been chased in small pens might not have enough room to understand you properly and could kick out at you on a short pen. But there is something about, you think about when horses chase each other, truly chase each other out of a herd. Who does that? The horses that are banished from herds are generally either about to die, or they're weak and sickly as youngsters, or they've been badly damaged. The herd doesn't want, a stud doesn't want young colts in there for too long. By the time those colts have grown up to be capable of managing a group of mares on their own, the older studs will run those youngsters off, and that's the end of that. Okay, so that's one way they go out of the herd. The other way is to be left behind or pushed out when their condition would attract predators, wolves, mountain lions, other things that would want to get in there and would pose a threat to the group. Some of these horses will put the old ones out or put the hurt ones out. And so when you think about chasing a horse against a panel, you think about chasing him in confinement. There's something deep, an imperative instinct, an imperative biologic, I don't know, some code, deep old code, something deep in the cells of these animals that wants to belong. So, I think before you get after their bodies to move them, you might want to think about how you manage the space that you share.